Trauma Therapist Podcast, episode 441. All right, guys, welcome to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to raise awareness of trauma and to support new trauma therapists just starting out on their trauma-informed journey. I do that through this podcast and my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0. If you're a therapist of any kind, interested in learning about trauma, and you're looking for support and inspiration, I invite you to check out Trauma Therapist 2.0 by going to traumatherapist2.com. That's traumatherapist, the number 2.com. All right, let's get started. This episode is sponsored by CPTSD Foundation.org. And one of the great things about, for me, about doing this podcast is that I get to speak to and work with amazing people. And Athena Moberg, the CEO and founder of CPTSD Foundation.org, is one of those individuals. This woman is on fire. I got to meet her several months ago here in San Francisco. We had breakfast together and just had a really great talk. And I got to learn about her foundation and what they're doing. They provide complex trauma survivors and practitioners with compassionate support, skills, and trauma-informed education. Athena works together with expert practitioners and treatment centers, offering daily touch points to anyone currently in trauma therapy or who wants a safe place to come, feel heard and validated between therapy appointments. Some of the resources they offer are daily recovery support, a healing book club. They have free support groups. They also offer this really cool thing where they can send you texts just to encourage you and help you heal on your journey. So check them out at cptsdfoundation.org/trauma therapist podcast. Once again, that's cptsdfoundation.org/trauma therapist podcast. All right, guys, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. I am very excited and honored to have as my guest today, Sharon Salzberg. Sharon, welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right. Sharon is a New York Times bestselling author and teacher of Buddhist meditation practices in the West. In 1974, she co-founded the Insight Meditation Center with Jack Kornfield and Joseph Goldstein. Sharon's emphasis is on Vipassana and metta methods, insight meditation, and loving kindness methods. She's been leading meditation retreats around the world for over 3 decades. Her books include Loving Kindness, The Revolutionary Art of Happiness, also Real Happiness, The Power of Meditation, a 28-day program, and finally Real Love, The Art of Mindful Connection. So,
Yeah, really.
So, as I was saying before I started recording, I had sent the invitation out before we were in this COVID stuff. But now, I feel really fortunate that we can talk to you during this time. What is going on? Let me just start with that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think there's so many different levels going on. There's, I've long taught about the truth of interconnection, and because it seems to be true and often overlooked. And somebody just sent me a long ago quote from me back to me, and what I said is, this isn't just like a spiritual understanding. Economics shows us this. Environmental consciousness certainly shows us this. Even epidemiology shows us this, that what happens over there doesn't nicely stay over there. It comes over here, and what we do, where we put our energy, what we're dedicated to, that also matters because it will ripple out. And so I think on one level, what we're seeing is the kind of terrible face of interconnection. Mm-hmm. And my hope is that we'll also be exploring the kind of beautiful face of interconnection, compassion, caring, inclusion, things like that.
One of the things that, let's do this. I'm really curious, and I want to kind of extrapolate on everything you just mentioned, but if we can, let's let's kind of start with you talking a little bit about how the heck you got into this in the first place. What drew you into this field?
Well, I was a college student actually in Buffalo, New York, State University of New York at Buffalo, and a good long time ago. And I took an Asian philosophy course. And honestly, as far as I can remember, taking that course was kind of happenstance. It's like I looked at the schedule and I thought, oh, that's on Tuesday. That's good. And it completely changed my life in two ways. One is in the section speaking about the Buddha, they were talking about the Buddha talking about the suffering in life. And that's actually not a grim or depressing statement. That is a liberating statement because I, for one, like many people, had had a very traumatic, difficult childhood. And mine, like many people's, was a family system where this was never ever spoken about. And so I didn't know what to do with all of those feelings inside of me. And hearing that statement from the Buddha was like hearing, you belong. This is a natural part of life. You're not so weird. You're not so different. So that was an incredible moment for me. And I also heard in the context of that class that they were tools, they were actual methods that if one practiced them could make you a lot happier. And, I look back at that moment so often because I think, why did I basically caught on fire. I thought I've got to learn how to meditate. And instead of like, oh, this would be good to pursue in graduate school or something like that, I've got to learn how to meditate. So I looked around Buffalo. This is 1970, and I didn't see it anywhere. And the university had an independent study program where if you created a project that they liked, you could go anywhere in the world, theoretically, for a year, and then come back and do your final year. So I created a project. I said, I want to go to India and study meditation. And they said, okay. So off I went.
Wow. It's interesting to hear you talk a little bit about your traumatic childhood in a sense, and how that seemed to maybe emotionally isolate you, and then finding this course and these writings by the Buddha, and how that kind of sparked this feeling of I guess so many things, belonging or hope even. And, you write about that a lot, that feeling of, or that the need for us to value who we are, value the kind of hills and valleys and, the imperfections. And I'm just thinking how really important that is in this time, because of seemingly we're trying to physically isolate, and that kind of almost peels back the layers for who we are, which can be really hard.
Well, it can be hard, but I mean, it's an amazing, bizarre time, because something I really have felt, is that certainly in the US, in terms of the kind of general cultural message, is that suffering needs to be hidden. Mm-hmm. It's a sign that you've somehow lost control. And it ranges from, like, you shouldn't reveal that you're afraid, or you're sick, or, even dying is kind of seen as a sort of personal humiliation. Like, mm-hmm. You should have been able to beat it. And we also have that attitude often toward others. Like, if you're suffering, well, just take yourself away. It's displeasing to look at. And here we are. It's like all the veils have been ripped off too, and it's such a collective experience, although not everyone is having the same suffering, to exactly the same degree. Nonetheless, it's so massively shared that that's part of my pondering, like, well, will that help us develop more compassion?
Well, let's kind of unfold that. I mean, it certainly is an opportunity. I was talking with someone the other day who said that, this time hopefully will give those individuals who maybe don't have mental health challenges an idea of what people who do have mental health challenges are, dealing with, and just anxiety in and of itself. We don't even have to go all the way to the far end of the continuum and talk about trauma or PTSD, but anxiety. I mean, let's face it, the level of collective anxiety has risen. There's no doubt about it. Collectively, what kind of an opportunity does that present for us, do you think?
Well, I think part of it is just what you said. It's very revealing. If we are willing to pay attention, and the lesson could be compassion, instead of so much judgment. And I think anxiety is really predominant. Grief is really predominant, and if not pronounced yet, for everybody, I think it will be. I mean, I thus far have not lost a person that I know. But I suspect that my way of life before this is not going to be there. It's not going to be replicated exactly. There will be losses and change, and there probably will be people, along the way. And for me, even just watching those healthcare workers in New York City and thinking about what they're doing and what they're sacrificing, it's heart-wrenching. And these are very, very difficult times. And again, it's like we can wall ourselves off so strongly. I mean, we're kind of got that conditioning to isolate in other ways, not physically.
Right.
And here we are. And I do have this kind of hope that it will allow us to really care. And anxiety is such a high energy state that one of the things that people sometimes need to hear is that there are tools. Not that you shouldn't judge it and feel you're bad for having it or try to vanquish it or anything like that, but there are also tools for trying to get into more balance.
Mm-hmm. Such as what?
Well, for some people it would be different grounding tools. Some people would be feeling the breath, remembering to breathe, because one of the things that happens in like a freeze reaction is that we forget to breathe. And that in itself can be a relief, just remember to breathe. Grounding, feeling your feet against the floor. It's kind of like internal or external mindfulness tools, like feeling the warmth of the teacup. Connecting. It's connecting to what is happening right now, because so much of that high energy state of anger or fear is the energy is hurling us into the future, which seems very bleak when we're in that state.
Right.
It's like, and we're just usually spinning both energetically and through the stories we're telling ourselves. Well, that terrible thing's going to happen, and that terrible thing's going to happen. I'm never going to be able to get back to New York City. I'm going to have to go get someone else to empty my apartment. Who's going to go? When can they go?
So is what you're talking about, are these Vipassana meditation tools?
Yeah, well, Vipassana means insight. And so the engine for developing insight classically is mindfulness. So they're mindfulness tools. Because, we tend these days, when we talk about mindfulness in the popular sense, we tend to talk about it mostly in terms of one of its very strong benefits, which is inhabiting our life more fully. It's also an interesting time for many people, those who are not leaving home. Not everyone has that luxury, of not leaving home. But for the person who's not leaving home, unless you're glued to the television 24/7, the level of sensory stimulation we're accustomed to is much less. That's part of what's, having people go up the wall. And one of the things about mindfulness is that very ordinary, repetitive, routine experiences start to pop. You do feel the warmth of the teacup, and you smell the tea, and you taste the tea. And it's a much more fulfilling experience than when you're drinking that cup of tea and multitasking at the same time, also checking your email, also on the conference call, also looking at the news, also. So that's the way mindfulness has really been presented. And of course, that's an extraordinary thing. Classically, the main benefit of mindfulness is said to be insight. We don't just inhabit our lives, we understand our lives. Like we begin to see patterns in our minds and we say, woo, I thought that was making me so happy. That's not making me really happy, is it? Let me look at that. Or something I've often said in describing my own fears. It's sort of why I said what I said just a little bit earlier. When I've sat and just tried to be mindful of the feeling of fear, which means not getting engrossed in the content, like this is going to happen and what am I going to do? And I'm going to have to, break my lease. And like, well, what does it feel like? What does it feel like in my body? And what's the kind of fear movie if I'm watching it instead of in it? And what I've seen is that despite the world's pronouncement, which of course is also true, that we're afraid of the unknown, I'm largely afraid when I think I do know and it's going to be really bad. And it's all the stories that I spin that get me going. And that even in the midst of that, if I can remind myself, you know what, you don't know, then I actually relax and there's some space that opens up. So we kind of learn the nature of what we're feeling and maybe more hidden emotions that are in there and how they operate in us. And we definitely, especially learn that everything is changing, not just theoretically, but all the time in a real sense.
All right, guys, just quickly, I want to thank Sensorimotor Psychotherapy Institute for being a sponsor on this podcast. Do you struggle to help numb, disconnected clients who can't feel emotion or explore inner experience? Learn a comprehensive approach to conceptualize your client's concerns. As someone who's gone through the level 1 and level 2 trainings of sensorimotor psychotherapy training, I can really speak to the power of this training. For me, it was a game changer and is so inspiring. Sensorimotor psychotherapy uniquely includes the body and therapy as both a source of information and a target for intervention, because words are not enough. Go beyond theories and gain practical ways to open a new dimension for effective therapy. Visit Sensorimotor Psychotherapy Institute online today at sensorimotor.org. That's sensorimotor.org. So would you, recommend kind of for people who might be anxious right now during these times to maybe find a place to sit and to just settle, meditate in a sense, or just cultivate a type of self-awareness and to, like you said, watch or name the feelings that are going on?
Yeah, well, that would be very good. And if you want to experiment with meditation, there are lots of different kinds. So it's really an experiment. There's walking meditation for one thing, even if you're pacing in your studio apartment in Brooklyn or something, in very little space, because that will also move the energy. Like, remember, this is a high energy state, anxiety.
Right.
So it will also move the energy. You just pay attention to your feet touching the ground or the feeling of your body moving through space. If you're sitting, it might be the feeling of the breath, just the normal, natural breath. And you just settle your attention there. And I would, if you're going the sitting route, I would actually set a timer, like for 5 minutes. So you don't have that fear on top of everything else that you're going to be there for 8 hours, and take a very short period of time. If the breath is too ragged or it's, making you more restless, then just listen to sound. Just sit and listen to sound.
And this, for those of us who might be new to this process of sitting, cultivating a self-awareness, what slows things down? What do you say to the people like, I don't want all these thoughts coming in my head. What do you say? What's your response?
Well, the thoughts are coming in anyway, so right. It's not that you're making them come in, by quieting down. The key to mindfulness meditation is that we're changing our relationship to what's happening, not that we're changing what's happening. So there's no good and bad. You're not going to fail at it. And if it makes you even more anxious to sit still, do something else, do the walking meditation or drink a cup of tea or coffee and see if you can be there. And when your mind wanders, because that's the other thing, your mind will definitely wander. And that's not like a disgrace. It's not a sign of a big problem. It's just the call to let go and start over. let go and begin again.
Sharon, when all this kind of started, I talked about this, but my wife works, and she's fortunately continuing to be able to work outside of the home. I work from home, and now I'm suddenly with a 4-year-old and an 11-year-old who are both home. And I'm someone who normally loves to just read a lot of the news and be, up to date. I was going nuts. I was like getting so anxious with all these headlines and then the kids. And I said to myself, dude, you cannot do this. Otherwise you're going to go nuts. And I just needed to dial it in and say to myself, okay, what can I control? What can I focus on? And I can, stay inside. I can try to stay healthy. So I just need to dial that down.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of being aware, is understanding how things affect you, because we do have so many habits. And I decided, I can't read one more story like the 50 I just read,
Right.
It's not informing me anymore. And it's just hurting, in some ways. And I think the way you phrased it or framed it is really great. Like, what can we control? And we do that out of compassion for ourselves, not because we're too weak to take in the immensity of, the situation. We need boundaries. We need to understand, like, I can't do that. I have to be moderate in what I do. Or I have friends who are also sharing good news. They're making that effort to say, oh, well, there is another side. It's not in any way to deny that, truly terrible things that are also going on. But what about a moment of, I was in the hospital last year. I had an infection and I was really sick. And the first time I got up to walk was with a walker. And I had a physical therapist with me. And she said to me, it's not a race, you're going to get further if you'd only take some breaks and relax and then go on. And that became like my mantra. It's not a race, It's like, we're not going to resolve it all at once. And, we can't be in such a hurry. And it's not wrong to take some breaks.
Right.
You'll actually marshal some energy and be able to go further.
You've mentioned a couple times, or expressed, it's okay to take breaks. It's not a sign of weakness, etc. Do you feel that many of us feel that, like, oh my God, I've got to keep going, otherwise I'm going to be weak? Or
I think we feel that, or we feel like it's just the tempo. We think I've got to conquer this. I've got to make it go away. And it's a natural thing. It's a natural way of responding, but it also doesn't work,
Right.
It's not a reasonable thing for a human being to do.
Right. During this time, I would imagine that you're getting a lot of calls to talk to people, to share your thoughts. And why do you think that is?
Well, meditation's kind of for one thing, you don't need equipment. You don't need to like go out, it's like, and I think instinctively there are different elements to the meditative process. So I'll tell you the 3 that have helped me the most in this. And I think that's why it's attracting people. One is what I just said about the breath. It's a way of kind of cooling down your whole system and using something you're already doing, so that I think can be a very big help. And it's just training. It's not familiar to a lot of people. And so it's just getting in the habit of like, okay, remember to breathe. Or I feel just the beginning of the anxiety. Okay, that's a signal. Let me take some breaths. The other thing is that what we've sort of been alluding to is like mindfulness of different emotional states. and not rejecting them and pushing them away or feeling you're bad. And on the other hand, learning not to get swamped, and just overwhelmed. And that's almost the definition of mindfulness right there. We say it's the place in the middle where you're quite aware of and honoring what's happening, but you're not just subsumed in it, and you're also not pushing it away. So that doesn't happen, all the time, but you practice it. And the more you practice it, the easier it gets. And then the third thing is a sense of loving kindness, a sense of connection, because here we are. And, for a long time, I've been really interested in what people tend to describe as an epidemic of loneliness in this country and around the world, actually. And the answer to that doesn't seem to be, well, I only have 2 friends, I need 18, but it's an inner sense of connection. And, we're not in a situation where we can necessarily, unless you're happy doing that online, which is also an interesting idea, but, we're not joining social clubs or, doing things that we might ordinarily do to meet more people. We're ever more reliant on that inner sense of connection. And that's something meditation has absolutely given me, is that feeling.
Say more about that inner connection with ourselves.
Well, first with ourselves, but also with others. It's like what I said in the beginning about interconnection is not just a theoretical understanding for me or for, many people. It's something you just start sensing so strongly. And, there's such a sense of, like, sometimes when I've gone into companies or organizations to teach, I usually ask, how many other people need to be doing their job well for you to be able to do your job well? Because you suddenly think, well, there are people coming here and clean at night, or there are a lot of people I'm actually relying on that I don't necessarily ever think about or certainly don't acknowledge. And that's a true vision of interconnection. That's actually what's happening. And that can be the basis of some real empathy and compassion. And so there's something about that. It starts with a deeper connection with ourselves, and then and also in that deeper connection, giving ourselves a break. You're not denouncing what you're feeling, and you're not freaked out because your mind wandering. You may be, but you learn not to be, so much, and that starts extending to others.
It's funny not funny, but it's interesting to me that when you say, give yourself a break or it's okay, I automatically feel an exhalation in a sense. Really, I do. It's like, I like that. I like something where I can say, okay, I'm going to give myself a break, or it's okay. One of the things that I think has really increased my anxiety with all of this is the knowledge that this is global. And that is overwhelming to me. You talked about overwhelm, and kind of being swamped and stuff. That to me is so kind of gargantuan and humongous and overwhelming that it's almost too much to think about for myself. And I, again, needed to dial it in and focus.
How are your kids? How are they responding?
They're doing okay. I mean, my young one she's no longer in daycare. She's kind of longing to see her friends. We've been kind of, adapting and doing kind of FaceTime with her little daycare people. And my 11-year-old is having a hard time just being cooped up in home, not being able to go out, to stores. We're able to walk to green space and stuff like that. But it is definitely a challenge. And, I'm trying to be more mindful about it being a co-regulator, So for me, this has been an opportunity to really be mindful about how I am being. And
that's sort of why I asked, because I mean, in some ways, it's it's very hard on kids. In other ways, kids are very resilient,
Right.
and they can mirror they certainly mirror how we are, and so it does call for our best selves.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel that, people look to people like yourselves as for answers, for security during this time, for you maybe even to have some panacea or say something that's going to make everything okay in a sense?
Well, I certainly don't have a panacea, so it would be a big
Right. I'm
mistake to look
not
to me
suggesting
for
that you do, but I'm wondering if people like look to figures like yourself who are practicing what maybe a lot of us know that we needed to have been doing it for a while,
Yeah, I mean, that's very possible, and something I've also said for a long time is I was interviewed for a magazine once. I never got in it. I mean, they didn't print what I said, but the question was, how can mindfulness help in a time of like complete crisis? And my comment, which never made it into the magazine, was I wouldn't wait. It's like, why wait? But even if we do wait, it can be a useful tool. I see that. But I'm very grateful for my years of practice because I've certainly gone through ups and downs. I'm not like this, but it's almost like a muscle you develop. And not that I am perfect by any means. And I get overwhelmed and I get anxious and I start to grieve. And it's like I have all those reactions. But I find that I can come back to a sense of balance much, obviously more readily than I could 50 years ago, when I was completely defined by the very difficult things that I was feeling and also denying them. I'm somewhat famous for having, my first meditation teacher was S.N. Goenka, and it was a 10-day retreat that began in January 1971 in India. And I'm somewhat famous for having gone marching up to him once and saying, I never used to be an angry person before I started meditating, thereby laying blame exactly where I felt it belonged, which was on him. It clearly was all his fault. And he just laughed. And, certainly I'd been hugely angry, but I hadn't been in touch with it. And just that greater degree of introspection brought me right there face to face. And it was a while before I realized it was a twofold process. It was revealing what might have been more hidden, but also being kinder to myself about it.
In closing, kind of as we wind down here, what would you say to people who are listening to this and looking for maybe a tool or a technique, if you will, to help them get through the next day?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think about the stress dynamic a lot, and it really is a dynamic. There's the stressor, the pressure, the difficulty, whatever it is, and then there's the resource with which it's being met. And it's always a dynamic. Sometimes we can change the stressor. Like you learned, you can't watch the news 20 hours a day or whatever you're doing, So we do work with affecting the conditions, but our superpower is in changing the resource with which it's met. And so, and for me, that's twofold. One is inner strengths, like being able to ground, being able to remember to breathe, having more mindfulness about what I'm feeling and not adding to it by thinking I shouldn't be feeling it. And the other part is connection. It's community. It's some sense of not being so alone. And if we can work on those two, we can meet the stress in a very different way. And you can do that today. Like I said, 5 minutes of sitting down and being with your breath or listening to sound, or if 5 minutes is going to be too much, drinking a cup of tea or coffee and not multitasking, actually experiencing it. And if sitting is too much, then try walking.
And allowing ourselves to be okay with kind of whatever comes up in a sense.
Yeah.
All right. I'm speaking with Sharon Salzberg. Sharon, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Well, my website is SharonSalzberg.com. So that's really the best way.
Okay. Okay. And where are you right now in this moment? Are you
I
in
am
New
in
York
Barre,
or
Massachusetts.
Barre, Massachusetts?
Um,
Awesome.
I have an apartment in New York City. I left it 2 weeks ago, and I have a home in Barre. I have a retreat center in Barre, the Insight Meditation Society, but that closed down also about 2 weeks ago, and that's
Okay.
next door. So I'm in my house.
Okay. And how are you doing?
I'm doing I'm doing well. I went through a period of being really busy. It was like very strange, and um, IMS, the retreat center, has some online offerings. Other friends of mine, Tricycle Magazine, the app 10% Happier, putting up a bunch of free stuff online that are guided meditations and really helpful. And so I've been involved in a lot of those things. Things are kind of quieting down. So it's time
Okay.
to do laundry, which I haven't done,
Yeah.
which is really like yesterday was going to be my laundry day and I didn't do it. And I thought, oh, this is bad, like,
Right, right. There's something very zen about that. It's time
yeah,
to do laundry. Well, Sharon, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
thank you.
All right, take care. This episode is sponsored by CPTSD Foundation.org. One of the great things about, for me, about doing this podcast is that I get to speak to and work with amazing people. And Athena Moberg, the CEO and founder of CPTSDFoundation.org, is one of those individuals. This woman is on fire. I got to meet her several months ago here in San Francisco. We had breakfast together and just had a really great talk. And I got to learn about her foundation and what they're doing. They provide complex trauma survivors and practitioners with compassionate support, skills, and trauma-informed education. Athena works together with expert practitioners and treatment centers, offering daily touch points to anyone currently in trauma therapy or who wants a safe place to come, feel heard and validated between therapy appointments. Some of the resources they offer are daily recovery support, a healing book club. They have free support groups. They also offer this really cool thing where they can send you texts just to encourage you and help you heal on your journey. So check them out at cptsdfoundation.org/trauma therapist podcast. Once again, that's cptsdfoundation.org/trauma therapist podcast.